Welcome to another Tuesday Talk with Ruby Reese. Shortly, we will be joined by Marion from dogfriendlyireland.ie to speak about just that topic, Dog Friendly Ireland. Just so everyone knows, as always with this format, we like to keep it very informal, chatty, and conversational. So we will be making sweeping generalizations about your dog, your situation, or yourself. Please do speak with a certified professional because our comments will not always be relevant. Hello, Marion. Welcome to this week's Tuesday Talk.
Hi, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
Very good, thank you.
Brilliant. Thanks so much for joining. Would you do us the pleasure of introducing yourself?
Yes. Firstly, hello. Thank you very much for having me on. So my name is Marion. I set up and run Dog Friendly Ireland, which is an Instagram page and a website. Essentially set up there in 2020 and kind of does what it says on the tin. We kind of scout out dog friendly places in Ireland, but our website does a little bit more than that, which we can probably get into anyway. But it's more about helping doggy owners find dog businesses. So that's doggy daycares, litters, products, services, as well as the coffee shops, hotels, and restaurants. So that's kind of it in a nutshell.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. And just by way of introduction myself as well, I'm Killian from Ruby Reese. We are up and running with just over a year, and we set up a range of dog products suitable for sensitive tummies, sensitive skin, and so on and so forth. So if anyone wants to check that out, you can pop over to our website after listening to the talk this evening. So jumping right into it, I suppose, talking about Dog Friendly Ireland, how dog friendly is Ireland really, and how are we competing with the rest of the countries in Europe and the rest of the world? How are we doing as a dog friendly nation?
Look, we're not up there. It's not what we're thought of. Like, let's be fair, when we're put, we wouldn't be put on the same level as a lot of Queen City friends. So there's a lot we have to do. On the positive, it has come. I set up in 2020. I can see what has happened in just the last 3 years. I would say. I suppose to put it into perspective, it was 2007 when it was actually kind of written on paper officially that we're allowed bring dogs into food premises, obviously not around where food is being prepared, but so it's not that long ago. Throw in COVID for 2.5, 3 years. Well, so time's kind of flying. So look, we've a lot to do. I think we're kind of stuck in a rut a little bit in an old way of thinking. I think there's an old kind of tradition in Ireland, and we're stuck in it. The thoughts of bringing dogs into premises, but I think with a little bit of education, a little bit of coaching, I think businesses are going to go in the right direction. I don't like to think of us as not a dog-friendly nation. I think we are just not. It's not on our radar. Let's just say right now, for a lot out there, which is hopefully they're going to get a little bit better at.
Yeah, I suppose like the dog community, where everyone that's going to be watching into this is going to be part of one of either mine or your Instagram community. So I suppose we're preaching to the choir here. We all want to be the creme de la creme of the world in dog friendliness. But I suppose, like, even from my own perspective, I lived abroad for nearly 10 years. I lived in Germany. And, when I moved over, I thought, wow, this country is so much more dog friendly than Ireland. Whereas when I moved back, I noticed, God, Ireland has really come a long way. So I suppose in a way I had kind of that kind of period in the middle where I didn't see the progress until I came back and saw it. So I suppose an awful lot left to do, but getting on the right track. But I suppose drilling more into that, maybe this is very controversial, but do you think some areas of the country are better set up for doggy tourism than others?
Yeah, so I think I was going to say no off the top of my head, but I changed my mind straight away. I said, let's be fair, Dublin is of every other county in terms of I suppose it's probably unfair in some ways to put the other counties down because there's so many more restaurants and coffee shops and pubs in Dublin, just by the pure size of it. But it would be a lot more accessible for anybody living there with a dog than myself, who's in Carlow. Very limited. But saying that, the west of Ireland, I go to the west of Ireland a lot, and I mean, they don't even think they have to advertise that they're dog friendly either, because they're just like, yeah, bring it in, like, we're grand, it's easy going, like. So I suppose you could look at it two different ways, but yeah, I suppose Dublin is just a little bit more than the rest of the country.
Yeah, and I suppose there have been quite, like you say, I suppose out in, let's say, more rural parts of Ireland, there were places where the owner of the pub always had a dog, or it was a regular customer that used to come in with the dog every day, and it was just what they did. It was part of the premises nearly. But I suppose there's been a lot of other new businesses coming online now as a dog-friendly premises. And do you think that destinations and accommodation owners and restaurants and bars, cafes, have they, decided to become dog-friendly? Have they started feeding back now to the community, saying that it was a positive move for them, or do we hear much feedback from the community of business owners that are providing for dog families?
Yeah, for sure. Look, if it's not why we would, I suppose, we don't want to say it's a business move. That's why we want everybody to turn dog friendly. But I mean, if you go by sheer volumes of people out there, that like, sorry, I lost my train of thought for a minute. Can you just repeat that for me for a second? Sorry.
So I suppose
my dog is just whining in the background.
That's no problem at all. No problem. So I suppose a lot of businesses like pubs and restaurants and cafes have decided to become dog friendly for the first time in the last couple of years. Have they now had positive feedback? Are they turning to the press, or turning to you, or turning to their customers and saying, God, this is the best thing we ever did? Or how has the feedback been?
Yeah, no, sorry. So yeah, 100%. There is definitely, it's a positive move. It's a positive move, even just for social media. If you want to keep your social media going, you're going to get a lot more, likes on photos of dogs than maybe some of the other photos you're going to put up. You're going to get a lot more customers coming in. You're going to get people who can bring in their friends now with their dogs. They can bring their kids with their dogs. It's definitely a positive move. It's definitely a move the country wants. So it's a way forward move, and we need to move with the times. And if the kind of look, it doesn't suit all businesses, and that's fair enough. We don't have to force them all to do it, but it's definitely moving with times, let's just say, to consider it. And it is, as I said, I don't like using it just as a business reason, but it is our move to consider it 100%.
And I suppose it's still a very important factor, because if people realize that they can become really popular out of something like this, then it's great for everyone. It's a win-win really for the dog community and for that particular hospitality business. Like even from myself locally here, just down in East Cork, there was one pub that relatively recently went to the press and said that they, I don't know, was it doubled or tripled their business over the last year since becoming dog friendly. So I think sometimes it takes someone to come out and say that so that others start listening. And I know there's people writing in the comments as well saying, some businesses are not 100% committed to it and saying, okay, here's a table outside, rather than being fully in. So I suppose it does take a while for the real message to kick in.
And to touch off that, I suppose I like to see both sides of a story and be fair to a business as well. And I suppose I like to be diplomatic and say maybe there's businesses out there who they haven't grown up around dogs. They haven't grown up, it wouldn't even cross their radar to think a dog could come into a coffee shop or pub if that's what they were set up and running. So I can understand that if they were to consider it, they might go baby steps first.
Yeah.
They might consider outside. They have a couple of things to consider about their staff. They have employees that they have to, make sure it works for them. They have to make sure they can kind of maneuver their food tables. So they might just try it in one area first to make sure that's going okay. They've obviously kind of regular customers as well that they're going to want to ensure that are happy with their business, because obviously, like we said, business comes first. And so I suppose, and because we're in that transition period between not being allowed and trying to get to somewhere better, that I suppose, in my mind and in my opinion, even allowing that is a step in the right direction.
Definitely. I think that's really valuable for our communities to understand these businesses are going out on a limb to make changes. So I suppose give them a little bit of time to get where they need to be, and maybe they do sometimes need to take baby steps. So I suppose that's worthwhile thinking about as well. And so for planning a dog friendly trip, what are the do's and don'ts, and where does someone start about planning a trip? Because I know that your website and your socials contain a lot of the services, but I suppose a trip is probably the best way of looking at it, because then you've got accommodation, you're still going to have to look at food, you're going to have to look at all the other doggy services as well.
Yeah.
So how do people go around logically even planning a dog friendly trip?
Yeah, so I suppose the first part of it is when you're planning it, is to look at your dog and to look at yourself. So what do I mean by that is how comfortable is your dog to go on the trip? So that's first and foremost. So I could recommend a hotel after winning all the dog friendly awards in Ireland, has everything, restaurants, rolls out the red carpet. But I mean, if your dog is going to be a little bit nervous of coffee machines going off, glasses chunking, kids crying, it's just 100% the first thing to consider. So we all want to bring our dogs. So just, I suppose, your dog best. What's the best trip for them? So, just be dog friendly doesn't mean we have to bring your dog. So I suppose that's the first thing I would like to say. So consider the dog and consider the environment. That kind of plans out the rest of it. So say, for example, if you have a nervous dog, getting a cottage or a holiday home is probably a better option than going straight into a hotel in the middle of Dublin or Dingle.
Yeah.
Ease them into it. So consider that. Do you want a city environment? Do you want a country environment? Do you want to be in a hotel where there's families and kids, and you're maybe a little bit more confined conscious, or do you want to go to a holiday home where you're still away with them? You can kind of go to a coffee shop, but you can pull them back, and you can go back to your house for some peace and quiet at the end of the night. So I think that's extremely important to consider as well, and probably first should and maybe the camping trip is the better option for you as well. I've had great camping too. So I suppose that's the first thing to do. Consider your dog, consider the environment, and consider what's best. So I suppose then you can kind of probably look at your county. There's loads of ways you can do it. Like, first and foremost, there's word of mouth. So family and friends recommendations, that's always hugely important. So being there, done that. I suppose the next thing I would say is, if you're looking for a place, is social media. There's loads of dog pages out there who are doing really cool things, sniffing out loads of places that you can stay with your dog, small dogs, where you can get cappuccinos. Really, really important stuff they're doing, and I get so much inspiration off them as well. So definitely go follow a couple of dog pages and get inspiration there. Then I suppose consider and be open and honest about if maybe your dog needs some training. It's probably something I put on back burner for a little while. I was probably a little bit stubborn about it. And I got an hour session with a girl, and of course she told me, Hugo's perfect. I was the one who needed the training. But I know you're probably looking for me to give recommendations, but I think all of these things are really important.
So important.
Yeah, before you even consider. So for example, if just an hour or two session is so valuable to the experience to have when you go to these places, in terms of how are they on the lead? How are they being reactive? Are they going to be able to sit down in a coffee shop that you go visit, or maybe are they going to a little bit nervous? So plan that into before you book any trips as well. And then after that, I suppose, where do you just want to go in Ireland? If it's their first trip, what I have been recommending to people is, maybe do, I suppose I am this side of the country, but maybe don't go the 4 or 5 hour drive to Donegal for the first trip. Ease into it, try somewhere closer to home, test the waters, see how they're getting on. If anything happens, you're close to your vet, you're close to whatever you need to be, and then start expanding around the country, make the adventures, stuff like that.
And I suppose that's it. Like, I mean, all the things you've said, it sounds like common sense if you've heard it already, but I think if you're hearing it for the first time, you might be saying, God, that's something I never thought about. But you all want to have an enjoyable time. So expecting your dog that hasn't had, much training, isn't used to sitting down quietly in cafes, and then all of a sudden you're throwing them into a situation where they're supposed to be sitting quietly for an hour during afternoon tea in a 5-star hotel after a 5-hour car journey. You might be just biting off more than you or your dog can chew realistically. So I think, you gave such good points there, in just seeing what's actually manageable for you all, so you can have a good time. I love your point as well about glamping, camping, countryside, because there's a little bit more freedom there. You're not pushing a dog into a situation that has lots of sights, sounds, new people, new smells necessarily all of a sudden. So those are brilliant. And I suppose, is it worth thinking as well with accommodations if there are special considerations? And I know I don't want to bring too many negatives in, but when you're thinking about large dogs, when you're thinking about restricted breeds, when you're thinking about multi-dog families, these are probably something that need even more consideration when you're going away, right?
Yeah, look, 100%. And let's be fair. It's not the best at the moment. I'm not in the game of, suppose, calling places out on it, but what I would say is, and I'm in no way saying people shouldn't abide by policies that hotels have, but what I am saying is policies can be outdated on websites, so don't get disheartened. You might have heard about a place that's dog friendly, and you go onto their website and it might have 20 kg or 10 kg, as I've seen, for some dogs. And as again, I'm not saying don't listen to a policy, worth a phone call. It's happened myself. I have a Bernese Mountain dog. He is huge, and the website might have stated something. I've phoned up, spoke to reception, explained my dog, open and honest. And they're like, yeah, come on. Like, so internally, they might have changed their policies or procedures. But yourself, best intentions, you don't get to the website, you don't update the policy, you don't and I suppose a lot of the policies on websites are outdated and or template. So you would find a lot of the restaurants have the same one, accommodation have the same one over and over again. So I'm not saying it's great. And there's definitely issues there. I'm just saying, first and foremost, when you come across it, it is nice, it is worthwhile ringing the hotel. Okay, and it is just asking, it is be honest and upfront about the size of your dog, how many dogs you have, and you might be pleasantly surprised about the answer you because as I said, it's happened myself in the past, and it's something I will continue to do in the future as well. And look, to answer your question about it not being great, look, it isn't. I suppose all we could do for hotels, in my opinion, is be very good visitors, be very good dog friendly owners. Don't give them a reason. Make it easy for them. Constructive feedback, I think, is always good. So maybe, ask to speak to the manager in a hotel if you really wanted to stay, and maybe just give some constructive feedback. Again, I'm not asking people to be vigilantes and going after people, but we can only coach and advise and give our opinions, and it's up to them to take it on board. But I suppose they do have to be conscious if they're saying they're dog friendly, in the dog community. we don't really see breed as an issue, and we don't really see size as an issue. And it's something to maybe put an emphasis on a well-behaved dog rather than a breed or a size of a dog, is something that I would love to see us as a country moving towards. And the mentality of accommodation, especially, I think, because it's kind of more sits with them in terms of their policies. If they could put a little bit more emphasis on a well-behaved dog rather than a size or a breed.
And I really appreciate that as well. I love the fact that you touched again on, we also have responsibility as a dog community to represent ourselves well. I say to everyone, the dog community in Ireland, they're so supportive, so lovely. 99.999% of people in the community and dogs in the community are just lovely people, and we need to go out there and represent ourselves really well as well, so that these businesses start saying, God, it was really worthwhile opening up to this community and focusing on it. But I also found really interesting your point of calling the hotel, because honestly, if I read a policy, I don't expect to call, I would never even think to just call the hotel and see how, I don't want to say bendable the rules are, but how strict they really are on it. Because sometimes you read them and you say, wow, how can I even stay? How will this be an enjoyable stay? The dog isn't allowed in any of the public areas of the hotel, can't be left alone, no restaurant opportunities. And you think, God, what am I allowed to do? I'm allowed to sleep there and that's it. So there might be a bit more flexibility, you're saying, when you call, which is definitely reassuring. And I'm sure if you're a nice and friendly, respectable person on the phone, they'll let you know what's possible.
The one thing actually, and I should have said it, and that's one thing I like. And as I said, feedback can be constructive. Is when you have to get room service and pay for it on top of being a guest there as well. So you've got your dog there, and you've got your breakfast paid for, but you can't go down to the breakfast room, so you have to pay an extra 10, 20 to get it delivered to your room. And so it's one of the things I personally give feedback on, just as a little tip or a note that's left in the room when they leave the little slip in the hotel room. I write down again, it's just they can take it on board or don't. But I suppose if we're not saying it, they're not hearing it, so we might as well put it on the piece of paper.
Yeah, absolutely. No, and I think anyone that works in the hospitality industry, or most people, they're looking to improve their relationships with their guests anyway, and get them coming back again and again. So I think that most reasonable accommodations will be open to at least hearing a suggestion.
Yeah.
And talking about just practicalities of a trip, because many of us might not have even gone on a hotel trip, or say a glamping trip with dogs to a new place. So are there any items you recommend that we bring with us on a trip, things to pack that might make our lives a bit easier, a bit more comfortable on the way? Have you come across any of these kind of tips?
So yeah, I'm probably a terrible person to ask, because at the beginning the car would be packed with every single toy, a bed, blanket for every situation, dog bowl, toys, you name it, food, and sure, nothing's looked at the end of the day. He just sleeps on the ground in the corner of the room and look at his toys because he's worn out from playing on the beach. But in terms of practicality, I suppose, look, important ones is if your dog's on medicine, Hugo would be on medicine that he take daily, so we have to make sure that we have enough supply for whatever trip that we go on, that we have enough for that. The other practicality is look up vets in the area. I know it's a horrible thing to think about, but unfortunately, if something happens, taking out and Googling a vet in the area is probably not where your brain's going to be at. So maybe just have it written down in your phone, or just in advance, just so you never know. For other practicalities, sorry, all these boring ones, but obviously have your microchips and everything like that up to date before you go. It's another important thing. So then little things like we eat raw diet, so just make sure you can store your fresh food for your dog. You have somewhere to store it. It's a huge one in terms of, and I suppose if you're bringing nuts or any other sort of food, how are you bringing it? How are you going to in it, and where are you going to store it at the other end? So, you know, obviously, does the fridge have a hotel room, or is there a fridge in the hotel room that you put it, or are you going to put it in lunch boxes? And then after that, like, what are your activities going to be? We always have a towel in the back of the car. The last thing I want to do is to be bringing our dog to a beach or a muddy forest and then expecting a premise to be him to walk back in muddy paws or sand. So I think it's a huge important thing, because you probably are going to be going on an adventure. It's probably going to be raining in Ireland. So I think towels, we use the kind of micro towels because they're quick drying. So we always have that in the car as well. Always have, whether you're going far or not, I think it's huge important to have your little disposable water tray. We would always have 1 bottle of water for the humans. It's just so handy to whip out a bowl and throw it in, and it packs up and it goes away. And then after that, it's what's your dog's personality? Does he want his bed? Do you want his bed? Not. Does he want these ties? Does he not? And I suppose maybe for maybe the more nervous dogs or something like that, to bring some enrichment toys. If you want to keep them distracted, maybe, you know, if you're staying in a hotel for the first time, I think the practical one is, and there might be people running up and down a corridor, there might be some noise, and maybe you just want them to be distracted for a little while and feel a bit comforted. So I would take that, and then obviously if they have a personal blanket or something that makes them feel something that makes them comfortable, I think that's important as well. So I probably would be different there in terms of what I give you, but yeah.
Definitely, and you touched on some brilliant points there. Someone mentioned in the comments about blankets in case there's low-lying furniture in the rooms or anything that you just want to cover in case dog hair gets on them, which is brilliant. Thinking of our community representing well. Love the fact that you mentioned the vet, because that's not an overreaction. Once we were on a trip in another city and Ruby got stung by a bee or a wasp, went into anaphylactic shock, and you need to find a vet ASAP. It was a bank holiday on that day as well, so you just need to know where the 24-hour vets are around in your area. It's really good to know, because if you need it, you definitely don't want to spend your time searching for it. And towels to get rid of the muddy paws and the wet dog coming into the hotel lobby. I think a bit of Ruby Reese leave-in conditioning spray thrown into the mix there would be brilliant as well. And the last thing I wanted to touch on was transportation. I suppose obviously a lot of us in Ireland do have cars, and a lot of our destinations, especially the best destinations, tend to be reachable best by car. But you know, there's a lot of ferry companies out there in Ireland that seem very, you know, a lot of the ferries and boats seem open to dogs. Some trains, I think, some taxis. I don't think buses are an option in a lot of Irish cities. How do we feel about transport overall?
Yeah, no, look, it's for take the dogs out, but I suppose as a country it wouldn't be overly great anyway. But then bring dogs into the equation. Let's just say it as it is. It's not great. There is kind of a I won't go into the policies, because there's even miscommunication about between what might say on one part of one company's website and actually a second part of the same company's website says something completely different. So it's conflicting in their own websites. So it's very hard for us to understand. So look, it's poor. We've a long way to go. You can't go on a bus. The Lewis, I don't think so. The Dart, you can't go on as well. You can go on. But yeah, you really your own car, unfortunately. We've a long way to go there, yeah.
But it's worth mentioning anyway, you know, because if you think you're going to a city destination and you're in the outskirts of Dublin, let's say, and you need to know how you're getting into the city, you can't just rock up and expect that you're you know, you can just jump on any Dublin bus. So it's worthwhile thinking about having the transport and everything there. So it's been so nice speaking with you, Marion. Thank you so much for sharing your insights. I certainly feel like I learned a lot. We're definitely starting off on a journey as a country, I think. And let's see where we go. But we do, as a community, need to support some of these businesses, the cafes, the restaurants, the ferries, everyone that's out there trying to be more supportive of the dog community. So if you've enjoyed what Marion said and you're joining from my page, head on over to her Instagram, Dog Friendly Ireland IE. There's a dot in between that for the website. It's dogfriendlyireland.ie. If you're joining from Marion's page and you don't already know Ruby Reese, our page is Ruby Reese Official, and our website is ruby-reese.ie. Thank you so much. I really appreciate your time and all of your tips and knowledge, and I can't wait to see where we go on this journey with a more dog-friendly Ireland.
Perfect. Thanks so much. Really enjoyed it.
Thank you. So did I. Thank you. Have a good evening.